realistically, I'm trying to figure out, would I have to, like, assume, like, 10 feet of this is, like, the overgrowth and then, like, a 5-foot passageway? All right, Alex, I got a mechanically speaking for you.
Oh, good. The mechanics can speak right to me. Let me hear them.
Okay, terrific. So, as you are probably aware, my bard recently became a level 5 bard.
Great. Everyone's so excited, and the rocks are going to fall, and the bard's going to die.
Oh, absolutely. And as you know, because I'm a level 5 bard, that means that I have 3rd level spells. And,
Even better.
Oh, yes. Which is scary.
Maybe you'll be useless. Or sorry, useful. You already are useless.
Thanks for that.
Vicious Mockery.
Vicious Mockery is now 2d4s.
Slightly better. You can do longsword damage.
Yeah, absolutely. I can do longsword damage. No, actually, damage-dealing spells for me are mostly the thunder ones at this point.
Yeah, sound-based ones are pretty good.
Yeah. So anyway, I traded out one of my 2nd level spells so that I could get Tiny Hut, because Tiny Hut's always useful. But
that makes a tiny hut, right?
That does make a tiny hut, yes. It does. Very useful when you're camping or in an unsecure area. Because it keeps other creatures from coming into the hut, but your people can move in and out. But that's not the big one, because I also get another spell, and I took
Fireball.
a 3rd... no, I don't have Fireball yet. I do have Magical Secrets, but I don't think I'm taking Fireball when I get there. But the thing about it is, I was able to get one from my spell list that I thought would be a lot of fun, called Plant Growth! Yay, Plant Growth! And I will actually, while we are doing this, I will pull it up, because I want you to actually see what Plant Growth does.
I'm vaguely familiar. It's been a while. I know it is technically part of the Druid spell list. I believe probably at a lower level.
You know what? It might actually be, but it is also in the Bard spell list.
Sure, Bard has a lot of crossover. With
yeah.
Other spell lists.
And it's also important to note, one of the things you might be thinking about is that the Druid has a specific one called Spike Growth.
No, I know. They also have Plant Growth.
Oh, okay.
Spike Growth, I think, is specific to Druids and maybe Rangers.
Yeah, they can do both, and if you do both of them at the same time, oh boy, it's
even worse.
That's a good combination. And I read, it's a 3rd level instantaneous transmutation spell. Luckily, it doesn't take control or concentration or anything. And once you do it, it just changes stuff, similar to like a mold earth or shape water or anything. But if I read it correctly, and I do, the spell
word for word even.
Yes, this spell channels vitality into plants within a specific area. The specific area is very large, just for the record. There are 2 possible uses for the spell, granting either immediate or long-term benefits. I like spells that have a lot of different kinds of applications, because the motility of them is what I really enjoy. And this one fits that itch. If you cast the spell using one action, this is the one people probably use, choose a point within range. All normal plants in a 100-foot radius centered on that point become thick and overgrown. A creature moving through the area must spend 4 feet of movement for every 1 foot it moves. You can exclude 1 or more areas of any size within the spell's area from being affected. And then the second use for it is cool, but it's really more of a narrative thing, which is if you cast the spell over 8 hours, I'm just dancing for 8 hours with my guitar. You enrich the land, and all plants in a half-mile radius centered on a point within range become enriched for 1 year. Plants yield twice the normal amount of food when harvested. So, cure famine.
I remember this one because my druid did have it.
Mm-hmm.
And he had, I believe, used the 2nd version over 8 hours to help enrich the land after it was blighted, I think, for a bit. So I think he was going around and helping to restore some of that fertility and helping the plants grow back.
Yeah, I will probably try to do that as a nice favor for any nice communities that helped us out as a narrative piece. But The actual first one is probably the one people are using most often because it is a very nice control spell to kind of deal with large hordes of enemies that might be rushing at you.
Yeah, 100-foot radius is pretty big.
That's huge. It has a range of 150 feet, so you can have like just an army off on the horizon and essentially a 200-foot diameter sphere, so over and around, you can just create these overgrown weeds that rush up. But I had an idea for this that I think works inside essentially rules as written, but would be a specific version of casting the spell. And this is what I had an idea for. Since Max is, like an artist of sorts.
Sort of.
Sort of, yeah, he's a musical artist, but there's a certain whimsy to him. And I thought what he'd actually really like to do is to be able to use that to essentially create a labyrinth. So, like, just this big spherical labyrinth where you had those overgrown parts, and then you had pathways, specific pathways, that track through from one side to the other. And if he knew what that specific labyrinth was, it would make it easier for him to get from one side to the next. But anybody that's inside of it is now trying to figure out how they move through that, or if it's worth their time to try and bash through the hedges, even though it's going to severely limit their movement. Now, the reason why I thought that that would be possible inside of the spell is because of that little tagline about you can exclude one or more areas of any size within the spell's area from being affected.
Okay, so you're considering an area like a corridor, perhaps.
Like corridors as those areas that are excluded from the overgrowth.
Okay. I mean, it doesn't give you a limit on how many areas you can do, or their size, or anything else like that. So technically, rules as written, yeah, you could do that. I would say, if you were to do that with me, for instance, I would let you do it, but I would make you roll some kind of check.
Okay.
With it, maybe a nature, since it's dealing with plants.
Sure.
Or maybe just a general performance check to see how good you can do.
Sure. Okay.
Something like that, where it would be you and I can figure out what sounds best for this, for instance, and then we go with that. As long as you pass your check, it's like, yeah, you are able to do that.
Fair enough. Yeah. On that topic too, I was thinking to myself, do I need to actually build that maze? Like, do I have to actually lay that? Is there a process, even if I don't know it in real life, would I have to have a point where, like, Max actually sat down in a tavern, had a paper napkin in his hand, and he's, like, tracing out how he wants that maze to run so that he can figure out a really easy way for him to get from point A to point B, but then also these elaborate corridors that would make it harder for creatures to actually get around.
I think it'd be more interesting if you just had to have it in your head, but you could do it on land even if you didn't necessarily know what the land was like.
Got it.
But I think it'd be better if you knew the lay of that land where you're going to do it, because otherwise it's like, yes, I've done this labyrinth here, but suddenly there's a rock in the middle of the corridor where there should be a way to get through here easily without going around it, but now there's a giant rock in the way. Yeah. I think it'd be great if, say, you were like, I want to make this labyrinth. I go, cool, make your check. And then you fail the check, and I was like, cool, you make the corridor. But instead of it being the one that you're familiar with, you have no idea how to navigate it now because you fucked up.
Yeah, you fucked up. So now now you're probably going to get lost in your own maze.
Now you're lost in the maze that you made.
Yeah. The other part of that I'm trying to figure out is, so I want to make it so that, like, any enemies that are in this would be compelled to try and figure out how to get through it rather than just hack their way through each and every one of those walls. So realistically, I'm trying to figure out, would I have to, like, assume, like, 10 feet of this is, like, the overgrowth, and then, like, a 5-foot passageway, and then, like, another 5-foot barricade on the other part of this to make this worthwhile? Because if I make them, like, a foot wide, it's just not going to be much point. Like,
it would also depend on how tall the overgrowth is, for instance.
Sure. You could make it very tall because it's...
I think you could do something like that maybe with mixing it with an enchantment type spell, maybe a
Oh, okay.
command spell, or something else like compulsion, if not command. I don't remember all the bard spells, but maybe a taunt. Where you're like,
okay.
I bet you can't find your way through this maze as a compulsion, and they're like, I bet you I can. I'll find my way through this maze. Where you're commanding them to actually try and navigate the maze. Instead
Right.
of just hack your way through it.
Right. I kind of figure that any monster that has a fairly good intelligence, like just not like a beast that has like an intelligence score of 2 or something like that, will try to get through that first hedge and then kind of go, you know what, maybe I'll try to find a way. like after the first one, do I want to try getting through this next one, or do I want to go around?
I would have, like, for instance, if you did that, I think I would make it so monsters that are somewhat intelligent might make wisdom saving throws.
Oh, yeah.
Like, if they're smart enough to realize the path is faster, or if not, they're just gonna try and trudge through the grass and overgrowth, you know?
Through my overgrowth to see if they
Yeah.
can do it, yeah. I did figure, though, that if the hedges are about 10 feet, they'd have to expend 40 feet of movement to get through there, and for a lot of creatures, that's their whole movement.
Right.
Yeah. So I figured that, and without sacrificing too much in the way of, like, non-difficult ground, if there was, like, a 5-foot passageway in between, it's like, I could sack that, like, 5-foot passageways for, to make it a little easier for them to actually get through, if they did indeed hack through, but it would also be way more interesting to actually have a maze. Also a lot of fun if you just do that for people's amusement, or if you had people in your party and you said, yeah, no, it's okay, I'll cast it, then we can camp out inside the maze. And it's going to be really difficult, but I know how to get out of it really easy. Don't worry about that. And
I mean, you can always just, well, maybe not that. You can't dismiss that spell because it's instant. Never mind.
Yeah, that, as far as I'm aware, if I do this plant, which is why I have to be careful, if you do the plant growth, when you cast it, it's just now overgrown until something comes along to actually move it.
Right.
Which means that if you cast it too close to you and you do not separate your own party from the mix, your party is now in trouble too.
Right.
There's a lot of fun uses for it, especially if you worry about getting surrounded and you want to just create like a narrow corridor where you are and put it all the way
more so
around.
if you have someone with entangle.
Oh yeah, if you said, or as we were talking about earlier, spike growth, because then you can lay down a patch that's literally just, taking damage as you go through, and if you can mess that with a force spell that keeps pushing people away.
Sure. I mean, my ranger can take spike growth, I believe.
Oh yes, well that's a very good one to take. Yeah, that's gonna be a weird day in the woods for some boars. Some boards are gonna wonder what they're doing. That's always a good idea. Now, technically, because that is a sphere, you could actually encapsulate it over the top if you didn't want, like, flyers to be able to fly out of it easily. That might actually make it more worth their time to try and traverse the maze.
Yeah, up until the fire elemental comes in and just burns the maze down.
The other thing I was thinking about is, man, I wish I had just some kind of fire spell, because if it turns out that this doesn't work, just set my whole maze on fire and walk away.
I mean, you really need much of a fire spell at that point. You just need a nice torch.
Yeah, you need a good torch. Or a strong tinder box.
Yeah.
Just create a bonfire. Just your little campfire on the outside. They're in the middle of going through a maze. They're not going to notice. You'll be able to do that.
What's all that smoke? Who knows?
Yeah, we're trapped in this maze. Now it's all on fire. What are we going to do about it? I think that...
Run!
Yeah, run. Run where? Run Burgundy. Ron Burgundy. That's what I was thinking about. Anyway, that is definitely a Ron Burgundy move for D&D, though. Just creating a giant burning maze.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Anyway, my My purpose of that is to create essentially a signature version of the plant growth spell that's called Max's Mystery Maze. Which is just going to be fun for the whole family. Not for raiders.
What you do is you find a giant patch of poison ivy, and you turn that into
that gets... Do they take like 1d4 poison damage if they go through the hedges?
They all contract severe poison ivy.
They start itching all over?
Yep.
Then they have to make like a constitution saving throw every turn to see if they just spend their entire movement itching.
or brambles. If you could see, here's the thing about plant growth. Is if you can identify plants that are already hazardous.
Oh yeah.
You know, brambles, briars.
Sure.
Poison plants, venomous plants, plants that are maybe sentient.
Spiky plants. Always good.
Briars.
Briars.
Maybe you get plants that are like man-eater plants.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Or plants like assassin vines.
Perfect.
So it's like those plants would probably get a resistance throw to save against it, but can you imagine?
Oh. Yeah.
An assassin vine that becomes grown much larger.
Oh, I love that. Let's make that happen.
Right.
It'd be like Little Shop of Horrors, where you just turn Audrey 2 into Audrey 2000. And just Audrey 2000, everybody.
Yes.
It's good times. Now I know the episode title. Anyway.
Feed me Seymour. And you just have Seymour being eaten by the plant.
Yep. Always. So, considering that I've been trying to do this inside of the rules as the spell actually goes, do you see any issue with that, besides the modifications that you might put onto it for memorizing the spell or whatever?
No, I don't really see any reason to say no, you can't do that. It's not like it's super game-breaking. It's fun, it's interesting, it's a weird way to use a spell.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And again, as we said, if you find plants that are already hazardous, then it's even more of a boon.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So...
Yeah. I mean, I figured that from a technical standpoint, the only thing I've kind of done is remove areas that are actually overgrown, which is kind of not even an optimal way to use it, but I thought might be a better, more confusing thing to do to enemies, just to maybe troll them. I don't know, but but definitely something to give the enemies more to think about when you encounter them. Yeah.
Definitely.
But then the other reason why I did it was because I thought, well, if Max knows how to get through it easily, then it would be something that he and the party could get out of much easier, while it would be much more difficult for the raiders or whatever you encounter to move through it. If I just did a straight-on plant growth and you just had overgrown weeds, it's equally difficult for everybody. But if he has the knowledge to, and he's done a good job at making it, it becomes way, way easier for him to get out of it or through from one side to another, where everyone might be chasing and following suit. Also, a fun party trick if the kids in town just want a maze to run through.